The rain began just after their plane descended. Through the gray Paris sky, Ethan Vale watched the droplets race across the airplane window, while the city slowly emerged beneath the clouds like an old memory returning from sleep. Paris looked colder than he remembered. Not physically cold, though. November had already painted the streets silver with winter, but emotionally cold. The kind of cold that lingered in old churches, empty train stations, and hotel hallways after midnight. His mother loved Paris. "Look at that," she whispered softly as the Eiffel Tower appeared through the fog in the distance. "Still beautiful." His father barely looked up from his phone. Daniel, Ethan's older brother, was busy making Sophie laugh, quietly beside him, their shoulders pressed together beneath the dim cabin lights. They were engaged now, officially, though Ethan suspected. Sophie had known long before Daniel ever found the courage to ask. Clara sat beside Ethan near the window, sketching absent-mindedly in the small notebook she carried everywhere. "What are you drawing?" Ethan asked. She tilted the page away playfully. "You'll see later." That was Clara, always hiding pieces of herself inside notebooks, photographs, unfinished songs, and half-spoken thoughts. At 22, she still carried the fragile softness of someone untouched by the cruelty of the world. Ethan envied her for that. The family arrived at their hotel near Montmartre shortly before evening. The streets shimmered beneath the rain, reflecting gold from old cafes and antique street lamps. Music drifted from somewhere unseen, a lonely violin echoing through the narrow Parisian roads. Everything felt cinematic. Too cinematic. Ethan had traveled before. Rome, Vienna, Prague, but Paris always carried a strange heaviness to him, as if the city remembered things people were supposed to forget. That night they went to a small bar tucked between two aging stone buildings just off Rue des Abbesses. It was warm inside. Dim amber lights. Cigarette smoke curling lazily near the ceiling. Old jazz humming softly through hidden speakers. The kind of place where secrets probably lived longer than people. His mother ordered wine. Daniel talked about wedding venues. Sophie teased him about being too nervous to dance in public. Clara disappeared briefly to photograph the rain outside. Ethan tried to relax. He really did. But exhaustion lingered behind his eyes after months of overworking himself in London. Photography had once felt meaningful to him. Now it felt mechanical. Weddings. Fashion campaigns. Wealthy strangers pretending to be happy beneath expensive lighting. Somewhere along the way, he had stopped seeing beauty naturally. Now he hunted for it like a starving man. Halfway through his second drink, Ethan's attention drifted across the room. And that was when he saw him. A man sitting alone in the far corner booth. Tall, broad shoulders beneath a black wool coat. Completely bald. His face pale beneath the low golden lighting. At first, Ethan felt only familiarity, a strange flicker inside his chest. Then the man slowly turned his head, and Ethan froze. The glass nearly slipped from his hand. No, impossible. The man's face struck him like a buried nightmare clawing back to the surface. Not because Ethan knew him personally, but because he had seen him before, years ago, standing outside their house in London during a thunderstorm. Ethan had been 16, then unable to sleep. He remembered walking to the kitchen for water around 3 in the morning and glancing through the front window. The man had stood across the street beneath the rain, motionless, watching the house. Ethan remembered the streetlight reflecting against his smooth scalp, the unnatural stillness of him, the way he looked less like a person and more like something pretending to be one. When Ethan blinked, the man had been gone. His parents dismissed it afterward. Probably drunk, probably lost, probably nothing. But Ethan never forgot the face. And now, after 12 years, the man sat quietly inside a Parisian bar, watching the room with emotionless eyes. Ethan's pulse quickened. The stranger lifted a drink slowly to his lips. Then his gaze met Ethan's. Everything inside Ethan turned cold. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, but something passed between them in that silence. Recognition. The man knew him. Not vaguely. Not accidentally. He knew exactly who Ethan was, and somehow, Ethan knew the man recognized him too. "You all right?" Clara asked softly. Ethan blinked hard. "What? You look pale." He looked back toward the corner booth. The man was still there, still watching. "No," Ethan muttered quietly. "Yeah, I'm fine." But he wasn't. Not even close. For the rest of the evening, Ethan kept glancing toward the booth. The man barely moved, never used his phone, never spoke to anyone, just sat there with terrifying patience. At one point, Sophie asked Ethan to take a photo of everyone together. He forced a smile and lifted his camera. The shutter clicked, then clicked again. When Ethan lowered the camera, the corner booth was empty. The man was gone. Ethan stood abruptly. "Where are you going?" Daniel asked. "Bathroom." It was the first excuse that came to mind. He hurried through the crowded bar and pushed outside into the rain. The street was nearly empty, only passing headlights. Wet pavement, cold wind, no sign of the stranger. Ethan walked halfway down the block, searching desperately through the foggy darkness. His breathing became shallow. How could someone disappear that quickly? Then his phone buzzed. A text from Clara. "Mom says stop wandering off, lol." Ethan stared at the screen for several seconds before finally returning to the bar. But something had changed inside him now. The feeling would not leave. That sensation of being seen, observed, like a camera lens focused silently against the back of his skull. Back at the hotel later that night, Ethan downloaded the photographs from dinner onto his laptop. Mostly ordinary pictures. Wine glasses, smiling faces, rain against the windows. Then he opened the group photo, and his stomach dropped. Far behind the table, barely visible near the hallway mirror, stood the bald man, watching them. Ethan zoomed in. The image became grainy, but the face remained unmistakable. Worse still, he wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking directly at Ethan. A cold wave crawled down his spine. Jesus. The hotel room suddenly felt smaller, too quiet. Ethan quickly opened the next photo, and the next, and the next. The man appeared in all of them, always distant, always partially hidden, near the bar, near the doorway, standing behind other customers, watching, watching, watching. A quiet knock startled him violently. Ethan Clara's voice. He slammed the laptop shut instinctively. Yeah, she opened the door slightly. You, okay, fine. You don't look fine. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Rain tapped softly against the windows behind them. Finally, Clara walked inside. You remember that man outside our house when we were kids? Ethan asked suddenly. Her expression changed instantly. What man? The bald guy? Clara frowned faintly. I barely remember that. I saw him tonight. Silence. That's impossible. I know what I saw. Clara sat beside him slowly. You're scaring yourself. Ethan reopened the laptop and showed her the photographs. Her face slowly lost color, because there he was, standing in every frame, still, watching. Oh my God. Ethan swallowed hard. You see him too, right? Clara nodded slowly, but something about her expression unsettled him further. She looked less shocked and more disturbed by recognition. Clara. She stared at the screen silently, then whispered, I think I've seen him before too. The room became unbearably cold. Neither of them slept much after that. At around 3:17 inches the morning, Ethan finally gave up trying. He walked toward the window and pulled the curtain aside. The rain had stopped. The Paris street below looked empty beneath the pale yellow streetlights. Then Ethan stopped breathing. Across the street, standing perfectly still beneath the glow of a broken lamp, was the man, looking directly up at their hotel room. Not moving, not blinking, just staring. Ethan's entire body locked with terror. The man slowly raised one hand and pointed upward, toward Ethan's window. Then the streetlight above him flickered violently. Once, twice. Darkness swallowed the sidewalk for barely a second, and when the light returned, the man was gone. Ethan stumbled backward in horror. What happened? Clara asked sleepily from the bed. But Ethan couldn't answer, because something else had caught his eye. Directly outside the hotel door below, lying alone on the wet pavement, was a photograph. Fresh, white edges, untouched by rain, as if someone had placed it there moments ago. And somehow, Ethan already knew exactly what was in it. Ethan did not remember leaving the hotel. One moment he was standing frozen beside the window, staring at the pale photograph lying alone on the wet Paris street below. The next, he found himself rushing barefoot through the dim lobby, while the exhausted night receptionist called something after him in French. The cold hit him immediately when he stepped outside. Paris after rain always smelled strange to Ethan. Wet stone, old smoke, fading perfume. The streets looked abandoned beneath the trembling amber streetlights. Somewhere in the distance, a siren echoed through the sleeping city like a dying animal. His breathing fogged before him as he crossed the road. The photograph remained exactly where he had seen it, perfectly dry, as though the rain itself had avoided touching it. Ethan crouched slowly and picked it up with trembling fingers. It was a Polaroid. Fresh. The chemicals inside still carried that faint metallic scent new photographs always had. And just like he feared, the image showed the hotel. Their hotel. Taken from across the street only minutes earlier. On the fourth-floor window, Ethan could clearly see himself standing beside the curtain, watching. But that was not the worst part. Someone else stood behind him inside the room. Tall. Bald. Motionless. The man. Ethan's pulse nearly stopped. He spun around instinctively. The street behind him remained empty. No footsteps, no movement. Nothing except distant headlights slipping silently through the fog. Yet the feeling persisted. That unbearable sensation of being observed from somewhere just outside human vision. His phone suddenly vibrated violently in his pocket, startling him. Clara. Ethan. She whispered the moment he answered. "Where are you?" "Outside." "You left." "I found the photo." Silence. "Then come back upstairs." Something in her voice unsettled him immediately. "What's wrong?" Another pause. "I think someone was in the room." The hallway outside room 417 smelled faintly of dust and old wood polish when Ethan returned upstairs. Clara stood waiting by the door, wrapped tightly in one of the hotel blankets, her face pale beneath the dim golden wall lights. "What happened?" I heard breathing. Ethan stared at her. "What?" "I thought it was you at first." Her voice shook slightly, but then I realized you'd already gone downstairs. A cold heaviness settled into Ethan's stomach. He slowly pushed the hotel door open. The room was dark, except for the soft glow of the bathroom light. Everything looked normal. Too normal. The curtains still swayed slightly from the open window. Ethan stepped carefully across the carpet. Then he stopped. His laptop screen was open. He distinctly remembered closing it before leaving. Clara noticed too. "You didn't leave it like that." "No." Ethan approached slowly. The gallery of photographs remained open across the screen. Every image still showed the man somewhere hidden in the background. Except now, there was one extra photograph Ethan did not remember taking. A blurred image of the hotel room itself, taken from inside the darkness, near the doorway. Ethan's blood ran cold, because in the photograph, he and Clara were both visible standing near the window moments earlier, which meant someone else had been inside the room with them. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Then Clara whispered, "We should tell Dad." But Ethan already knew how that conversation would go. His father would listen calmly. His mother would become frightened. Daniel would assume Ethan was exhausted and paranoid. And honestly, part of Ethan still desperately wanted to believe that himself. No sane explanation existed for any of this. Yet the evidence sat directly in front of him. The photographs, the stranger, the impossible timing, and worst of all, that awful feeling of recognition. As though this had all begun long before Paris. Long before tonight. Long before Ethan even understood it. The next morning arrived gray and heavy over the city. Rain clouds drifted low above the rooftops, while distant church bells echoed softly across Montmartre. At breakfast, Ethan barely touched his coffee. His father eventually noticed. "You look terrible. Didn't sleep. Too much wine," Daniel joked lightly. Ethan forced a weak smile. Then Clara quietly slid the photograph across the table toward their father. The atmosphere changed instantly. His father studied the image in silence. Then his expression slowly hardened. "You took this." "No," Ethan said. His mother leaned closer and immediately covered her mouth. "Oh my God." Even Daniel stopped smiling now. The bald man in the photograph looked deeply wrong somehow. Not threatening, not violent, just unnatural. Like a figure cut from another reality and placed badly into this one. His father looked up carefully. "You're certain this is the same man from London?" "Yes." For several seconds, nobody spoke. The cafe around them buzzed softly with ordinary life plates, clinking tourists, laughing coffee machines hissing. The normality of it made everything worse. Finally, his father exhaled quietly. "We're not splitting up anymore during the trip." Daniel frowned. "Dad, I'm serious." Something in his tone silenced everyone immediately, because, for the first time since this began, their father looked genuinely afraid. Later that afternoon, they visited the Louvre. The museum stretched endlessly beneath cold white lighting and enormous vaulted ceilings. Crowds moved slowly through the galleries like drifting ghosts. Ethan tried focusing on photography again, anything to steady his thoughts. Marble statues, paintings, shadows. But every few minutes his eyes searched instinctively through the crowd, looking for him. And then near the far end of a Renaissance gallery, Ethan saw the black coat. The man stood motionless among the visitors, watching. Not the paintings, not the tourists. Ethan. Their eyes locked once more across the enormous room. This time the stranger smiled faintly, not warmly, not mockingly, sadly, as if he pitied Ethan. A violent chill ran through him. "Clara," Ethan whispered urgently. But when she turned toward the gallery, the man was already gone. Again. Always gone before anyone else could truly see him. The rest of the day blurred together after that. By evening, the family returned to the hotel exhausted and tense. Even Daniel had stopped dismissing things now, because twice that afternoon, Ethan had unknowingly photographed the same man again in different locations across the city. Always distant, always watching, always expressionless. That night, Clara sat beside Ethan on the small balcony outside their room while Paris glowed beneath them. The city looked beautiful from above. Golden streets stretching endlessly into darkness, rain glimmering on rooftops, music floating faintly through the cold air. But neither of them felt any comfort anymore. "You remember Grandma Evelyn?" Clara asked quietly. Ethan nodded. "She used to say strange things before she died." "What things?" Clara hesitated. "About someone watching the family." Ethan looked at her sharply. "What I thought she was confused because of the dementia. Why didn't you tell me this?" "Because I forgot." The answer disturbed both of them. Forgot. The word lingered heavily between them. Clara stared out across the city. "She used to say there was a man in old photographs sometimes." Ethan felt ice spread slowly through his chest. "What kind of photographs?" "Family ones." Neither spoke again for a long while. Then Ethan quietly opened his laptop one more time. He began scanning through older digital albums stored online. Birthdays, Christmases, vacations, years of ordinary memories. At first, everything seemed normal. Then Ethan found it. A photograph from 12 years ago, taken outside their London home during winter. Daniel and Clara stood building a snowman in the driveway. Their mother smiled in the background. And far across the street, barely visible beneath a street lamp, stood the bald man, watching them. Ethan's hands started shaking violently. "How long?" Clara whispered. Neither of them noticed the hotel room lights flickering softly overhead, or the clock beside the bed, slowly freezing. 3:17 a.m., until suddenly the laptop screen distorted violently with static, and for one horrifying second the man's face filled the entire monitor. Closer than ever before. Pale skin, dark hollow eyes, and lips slowly moving, whispering something soundlessly. Then the screen went black. Complete silence swallowed the room. The power had gone out. Outside, Paris disappeared into darkness. And somewhere deep within the hotel hallway, slow footsteps began approaching their door. The footsteps stopped directly outside, room 417. Silence swallowed the hallway. Ethan sat frozen at the edge of the bed, while Clara gripped his arm so tightly her fingers hurt. The hotel room remained completely dark, except for faint moonlight leaking through the curtains. Neither of them breathed. A soft creak came from the corridor floorboards. Someone was standing there, listening, waiting. Then 3 slow knocks echoed against the door. Not aggressive, not hurried, polite. That somehow made it far worse. Ethan felt his stomach twist violently. Another 3 knocks followed. Clara whispered shakily, "Don't open it." He had no intention of opening it. But then a voice came through the darkness beyond the door. Soft, calm, male. Ethan. Every hair on his body rose instantly. because the voice knew his name. Clara buried her trembling hands against her mouth. The voice continued quietly, "You should not look for me." A long silence followed. Then footsteps slowly retreated down the hallway. Neither Ethan nor Clara moved for nearly 10 minutes afterward. Eventually, the emergency lights flickered back to life overhead. The power returned. The clock beside the bed blinked once. 3:18 a.m. As though the missing minute had never existed. Ethan forced himself to check the hallway. Empty. No sign of anyone. But something lay on the carpet near the door. Another photograph. He picked it up carefully. This one showed the hotel corridor itself. Room 417. Taken moments earlier. And standing directly outside their door was Ethan. Except Ethan had never left the room. His blood turned cold. Because the figure in the photograph wore his face perfectly. But the eyes belonged to someone else. Dark, empty, wrong. The following morning, Paris no longer felt beautiful. It felt infected. Every narrow street, every cafe window, every passing stranger. Ethan caught himself searching faces constantly now, afraid he would see the bald man again. Afraid he wouldn't. The family cut the sightseeing short after breakfast. His father insisted they leave Paris early and continue toward Prague ahead of schedule. Nobody argued. Even Daniel looked exhausted now, dark circles beneath his eyes from another sleepless night. Only Clara seemed strangely distant, quiet, distracted, as though part of her attention remained elsewhere. The train ride through eastern France passed beneath endless gray skies. Rain streaked softly across the windows, while forgotten villages drifted by like fading memories. Ethan sat beside Clara in silence for most of the journey, until she suddenly asked, "Do you remember my birthday?" Ethan frowned slightly. "What? My 8th birthday?" "Of course I do." But even as he answered, something felt wrong. He remembered the cake, the snow outside, their grandmother singing quietly beside the fireplace. But the details surrounding Clara herself suddenly felt blurred, unstable, like trying to recall a dream moments after waking. Clara watched his face carefully. "You hesitated." "No, I didn't." "You did." Ethan looked away toward the passing countryside. A terrible fear slowly began forming inside him. That fear only deepened after they arrived in Prague. The city looked ancient beneath the evening fog. Dark towers rose above winding cobblestone streets, while church bells echoed through the cold air. Prague felt older than Paris somehow, less alive, like a city that remembered terrible things. That night, Ethan searched online obsessively from the hotel room while the others slept. He dug through photography forums, missing persons reports, archived conspiracy websites, anything connected to strange figures appearing in photographs. At 2:41 a.m., he finally found something. An old discussion thread from 2008. Most images were corrupted or deleted, but one surviving post caught his attention immediately. The title read, "Do not keep the photographs." Ethan opened it. The post contained only a single paragraph. He appears after the first sighting, always distant at first, then closer each time. If your family begins forgetting things, it has already started. Burn every photograph immediately. Do not let him become remembered. Below the text was an attached image. A family standing outside a farmhouse somewhere in Scandinavia, and behind them, near the tree line, stood the bald man. Ethan's heart pounded violently. The timestamp showed the post was uploaded 18 years ago. He clicked the user profile. Deleted. Every reply beneath the thread had also vanished, except one. 3 words. "Too late for us." A freezing sensation crept through Ethan's chest. Then he heard movement behind him. Clara stood awake near the doorway, staring at the laptop screen. Her expression frightened him instantly, because she looked confused. Not about the man, about herself. Ethan. What? I had a dream. He waited. I couldn't remember my own face. The room suddenly felt suffocatingly cold. The next morning brought snow. Thin white flakes drifted through Prague while tourists crowded the old squares beneath umbrellas. At first, things almost felt normal again. Almost. Then Sophie stopped walking. Everyone turned toward her. "What's wrong?" Daniel asked. She stared at Clara uncertainly. "You're Ethan's sister, right?" Silence. Clara's face lost color. Daniel frowned. "Sophie, what the hell? I'm serious," she whispered. I suddenly couldn't remember her name. Nobody spoke afterward. Not during lunch, not while crossing Charles Bridge, not even back at the hotel. Fear had finally settled fully over the family now. Real fear. That evening, Ethan made everyone gather inside his room. We need to leave Europe. His father nodded immediately, but before anyone could respond, Clara quietly interrupted. I don't think it matters where we go. Everyone looked at her. She sat near the window, wrapped in a blanket, pale against the fading evening light. He's not following us. Ethan felt cold immediately. What do you mean? Clara stared at the snowfall outside. I think we're already inside whatever this is. Nobody answered, because deep down, everyone knew she was right. Later that night, Ethan woke suddenly around 3:17 a.m. The room was dark again. His throat felt painfully dry. For several seconds, he could not remember where he was. Then he realized someone stood near the foot of his bed. A silhouette. Tall. Still. Ethan's body locked instantly with terror. The figure slowly stepped forward into the pale moonlight. The bald man. Closer now than ever before. His face looked almost human up close. Almost. But something about his features felt unfinished, as though reality itself struggled to fully define him. Ethan tried screaming. Nothing came out. The man looked down at him with exhausted sadness, then finally spoke. You keep looking at the photographs. His voice sounded strangely layered, almost distant, as if multiple voices whispered beneath it. What are you, Ethan? Forced out weakly. The man tilted his head slightly. I am what remains. A terrible pressure filled the room. Ethan suddenly noticed dozens of photographs scattered across the floor around the bed. Family pictures, childhood memories, vacations, birthdays, and in every single image, the bald man stood somewhere nearby, watching, waiting. You should have forgotten me, the man said softly. Then Ethan saw something horrifying. In the oldest photographs, the man looked younger, not by much, but enough, which meant he had been with their family for decades. The realization shattered something inside Ethan. Why, us? The man's expression darkened faintly. You noticed. What you remembered. The room began shaking softly. The photographs around Ethan slowly started fading white one by one. Faces disappearing. Bodies vanishing. Entire moments erased from existence. Ethan grabbed one frantically. A Christmas photo from childhood. Daniel remained. His parents remained. But Clara was gone, as though she had never existed. Terror exploded through him. No. The man looked almost sympathetic now. She is nearly gone already. Ethan lunged forward violently and woke up screaming. Morning light flooded the hotel room. Daniel burst through the door seconds later. What happened? Ethan looked wildly around. No photographs. No bald man. Just the ordinary room. But something was wrong. Very wrong. Clara's bed was empty. And judging by everyone's faces, they had no idea whose bed it was.